Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Black Tech Fest, the virtual day. I got to catch up with Maxine Williams, the Chief Diversity Officer at Meta. She's responsible for setting a bold vision and pursuing ambitious DEI goals across the business, which includes people, product, policy, and partnerships. Hear what we have to say. Hi, Maxine. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you today ahead of Meta Connect and in Black History Month here in the UK. I know there's going to be a lot of exciting announcements, but I'm fortunate enough to have you and have some of your time to explore some things more DEI and culture related. So let's kick right in. I mean, it's been 2 years of many crises, starting with the pandemic, multiple events. Sometimes it seems like continual events of racial inequality events that have happened. When you take a step back and zoom out, what are some of the learnings you and your team have found, and also some of the milestones and achievements that you've made?
You know what's interesting is that while people are sort of counting these last 2 years as extreme, there's been extreme inequality for a long time.
Yeah,
And in fact, the reason that you focus on the issues that I focus on is because you recognize that. So prior to the pandemic, we had already been investing and focusing in order to try to close gaps, right? What you want is for everybody to have equal opportunity to thrive. You want people to get equal value from your products. You want people to be the architects of what you're building in equal measure. So, like, there were so many things that were going on pre-pandemic, which actually allowed us to have some more momentum to help through the pandemic. So, for instance, small businesses are an area that we focus on. If you think about DEI, yes, typically you're focusing on your own workforce. And that is where a lot of our effort goes, because we know if we can get more diverse people building our products, we're going to more properly serve a more diverse world. So you are focused there. But we also think about the larger ecosystem. And so how we help small businesses, which are minority owned largely, to thrive has been something that we've always, across our functions, focused on. So, if I can talk about milestones, maybe I'll mention a couple in different areas. If you think about in recruiting and retention and how you build your workforce, when we started on this journey, and when I say that, I mean to be deliberate and strategic about closing those gaps.
yeah,
We could see, for instance, that 15% of the people who worked at Meta were women in technical roles. Now, you asked about milestones, and so you're kind of talking about metrics. If you were to assume, well, how many should there be? One measure might be how many are graduating from universities with computer science degrees, because that's the typical profile, right? You're learning how to code, etc. And there were only 18% women graduating with computer science degrees. And so you would say, okay, one milestone would be like, can we get there? Can we meet what the market is offering? But we didn't want at that time to say 18% is how many we want, because actually I didn't want to be limited
yeah,
by that measure. And when we look back now, right, we've just published our annual diversity report, and you'll see that almost 26% of the people in technical roles are women, right? So we've gone way past what you would assume the market could offer. And that's the type of ambition that I want us all to have, where we're pushing and we're pushing to be better, because ultimately you want 50%,
yeah,
right? But there are all kinds of things in the system that are making that very difficult, right? If 50% aren't graduating, where are you going to get them from? If they aren't learning the skills, like, so you're doing things all in a full ecosystem, which is why I mentioned that, right? I'll mention one milestone from the DEI workforce space, but then if you look at how are we helping small businesses, we launched something called Elevate to help businesses learn, to give free training, to learn how to use digital marketing skills to build your business. And
yeah,
we set goals. We wanted 1 million Black businesses, 1 million Hispanic businesses to learn. And we passed those goals way ahead of time, right? That feeds into the bigger ecosystem. If people are building successful businesses, or during the pandemic, we gave away like a lot of money, millions and millions and millions of dollars, and dedicated to minority-owned businesses so that they can thrive. We're now member of the $1 billion Roundtable, which is a group of companies that spend more than $1 billion a year with minority-owned businesses, and that is we have a global supplier diversity effort. So we're working globally to spend our money with minority-owned businesses so that they can thrive. So there are a lot of things that you're doing, yes, since the pandemic, but many more that had started before, because it's the same issues that are then exaggerated in
Yeah.
a time like the pandemic, right? So if you just start then, it's great. But actually, the earlier you recognize the issues and you start working on them, the more progress you can make.
And so you've really been building that groundwork over time. It's, instead of waiting and saying, hey, this thing is happening, how do we respond? I mean, you've mentioned a lot in there around being deliberate,
Mhm.
and really being intentional. I've heard you before use the words intentional about doing this work. When you think about other leaders of companies and other companies, maybe not the size of Meta, how do you advise leaders to be intentional when it comes with DEI? Is it just the metrics, or is there more to it than that?
I actually don't think the metrics are, you can't just pull metrics out of the sky and be like, if I put a goal here, then I'm being intentional. That just
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. Like a goal without a strategy is just words. So you actually have to be intentional about the strategy and the way you build this into your system as a priority. And in every company, there are going to be trade offs, like it's complex things, right? Different moving parts. And unless it is embedded in the way you do business, then it's going to be really easy to deprioritize. And so the thing you have to be deliberate about is making this a priority. So, for instance, when we were looking intentionally about how are we going to grow a more diverse workforce, I went straight to how are we recruiting people now? Like analyzed the hell out of that and saw that, okay, what would probably make the most sense and have the most progress is if we could make the way we recruited built around a strategy which prioritized diversity. And so we implemented the diverse slate approach across the company, which and put like gates in place, which meant that our whole system was designed now to ensure that when we were interviewing for jobs, and by the way, you talk about the size of the company. Yeah, well, now we're like, almost an 80,000 person company, but then we were 4,000 people
Yeah.
globally, right? And we designed it so that you couldn't get through one gate unless you had considered underrepresented people among the people who were being considered for the job. So that it was part of what we did, right? You didn't move ahead unless you had interviewed qualified candidates from non-traditional backgrounds, from spaces, places that we didn't have enough representation of. And then once you've done that, great, like choose who's the best candidate among them. But it was built on the assumption that there were qualified candidates from different, ethnicities, genders, etc., who we weren't already considering.
Yeah.
And so, now that's just part of how we do business. If you take a more programmatic approach, it is easier for it in a hard trade off to be gone. So
Yes.
we took a systematic approach.
And I suppose to double click on that point, Maxine, I talk to leaders a lot about this in terms of how to make it just as a business imperative, which it is, rather than just being a siloed DEI thing. Um, but there's also pushback. And so I'm curious, like, how do you deal with pushback? You mentioned recruiting. A lot of times people will say, and leaders will say, this is slowing us down. Like, I just want to hire somebody, or I know that I get kind of my candidates from this pool, and they're always great candidates because they fit a profile. How do you deal with some of the pushback, and also help people learn and understand the benefits of it
Yeah.
as well?
Yeah. I run parallel tracks. So one is a quite scientific one where I'm generating proof.
Yeah,
And the other is one where I'm trying to educate people. So you're changing the system while you're trying to change the mindset.
got it.
And I think you need both. So on the mindset one, for instance, we developed really good training to help people understand where their perceptions were coming from, and where those were biased, and to help them see things differently. On the systemic one, I got like a bunch of uh, when we started, again, we were a small company, right? And so you're trying to do things, trying to prove that they work. Some things did not work, but
Yeah.
where things were working, I was tracking. I invested in getting good people analytics so that we could have the research and the proof, so that I could run a pilot on the same thing I mentioned, diverse slate approach, and be able to come back to people a year later and say, look at this. It does not reduce, it doesn't increase the amount of time it takes.
Yeah.
We, looked in different categories, and we could see, yeah, sometimes if you were looking for a highly specialized role, it would add X number of days. But if you were looking for most of the roles we look for, it really only added Y, which was an insignificant amount.
Yeah.
And when people saw that, then they were like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
more likely to try this, because we had proved that it didn't do the thing that their perceptions
That they
assumed it
thought
would.
it was going to do. Yeah. And switching gears a little bit to last year's Connect, Mark announced a name change, but really it was a lot more than that. It was really a new direction and vision for the company, the metaverse. Now there's been a lot of investment, both from yourselves and also the broader industry catching along. But for many, like, the metaverse is still fairly new, and it's still a new term that comes with its own biases, and comes with its own thinking about what it is. From your point of view, Maxine, like, what is the metaverse, and what excites you about it?
It is a place where we can spend more quality time, feeling more present with the people we wish to be present with, doing the things we wish to be doing in presence. So it is a way of being in the internet, which right now we can watch and participate.
Yeah,
But when we can be in it, I just think it raises the quality of what we can do and what we can receive. So, there are so that we're just at the beginning, right? So even when we say these things, it is, a vision, because we've seen the sparks of it. We've
yeah,
seen opportunities, right? I use something, we have glasses that we made in conjunction with Ray-Ban, where Ray-Ban stories are what are produced from them, but you can record your experiences without, having to take out your camera and do that, like through your glasses. What you are seeing, you are experiencing, you are also recording. And when I go to my children's football games and I'm like there in it, right? I am so present. The quality of what I am experiencing is so much greater, because the friction between me and my capturing of that has been gone. It's taken
yeah,
away. It's, completely zero now. And I cannot tell you how that lifts my entire experience. I'm there on the field. And this is the very beginning, right? Where we see the technology can take us, you're going to have experiences where the education you can get, the commerce you can build, like all of it, right? The theater, the art that you can experience is going to be so heightened without you having to physically move from where you are. And it's not that you don't physically want to be with other people, but I'm an immigrant, and I know that I simply cannot be everywhere that I want to be.
yeah.
So if I can have a better experience from a physical distance, but through this technology to be more present, that's what the metaverse can deliver to us. And like I said, it's going to be social, it'll be economical, it will be creative. So that's what the metaverse is. It's a space where we can spend more quality time.
Amazing, and much simpler than what I've heard before, Maxine. So well done on that explanation. I mean, for so long, the internet has been really seen as an equalizer. I mean, you talked about, um, just connecting, and people being able to connect with people in new ways. And even social media with Facebook has really taken that a step further. When you think about the metaverse, how is your team thinking about ensuring that not only people can get these immersive experiences, and connect with each other in new ways, but that it's inclusive, and that it's equitable as well?
Yeah, I think about it from 2 points of view. One is who's building it. So, we invest in the architects being more diverse people because that then generates, again, if you think about a system, more experiences we may not have thought of if we had just siloed uh, homogeneous teams, but also the result, what people get, I think is more rich. And so, on the one hand, when you ask, how are you going to ensure it's equitable? One thing is to ensure that we are building with people who are more diverse. So, for instance, we have avatars being built in London, we have things being built in America, we have teams doing research all around the world. Importantly, we are partnering with many, many organizations all around the world so that we get all of that input. We are partnering with people on every continent, academics, civil rights people, people who are creators. We've invested, we have a fund for creators, which again, it's like $150 million, where we are finding creators diverse creators, to work with them to build more experiences. So the architects need to be diverse if the output is going to be something that brings value to a diverse world. So that is one of the things. The other thing is that we're thinking deliberately about issues like accessibility from the start, where before, I think in the early version of the internet, things built upon themselves. People sort of like, in the sort of passion of the opportunity, rush to build things without making that a priority from the beginning. But now we have the opportunity to do so. So already, for instance, there are 1 quintillion different ways in which your avatar can be constructed. That just wouldn't have happened before.
Yeah,
I'm sitting here wearing what some people call Bantu knots in my hair. And there are avatars with Bantu knots. Like that's an option, right?
yeah,
Unthinkable before that would be a first option. But it is. People with cochlear implants, right? We're recognizing like there are people with disabilities throughout the world. In fact, millions and millions and millions. So how do we represent them? So all of that is going on from an early stage in order to make what we produce something that a diverse population can enjoy. And ultimately, we want to bring equal value to all of the people who use the products, which is what equity is.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's great the fact that you're not just thinking about Meta, you're thinking about really the community around who are going to build the metaverse. Obviously, the metaverse isn't going to be built by one person. What are some of the things you're hoping that other organizations also think about and bring to the table in the metaverse, again, to ensure this kind of vision of it being inclusive and learning some of the mistakes maybe in the first iteration of the internet.
Yeah, look, we've been transparent, is what we're doing, right? We cannot build this alone. It's not a thing that one company owns.
Yeah,
So, what we are hoping is by speaking, by doing conversations like this, by putting it out there, what we would love to see prioritized, what we are prioritizing ourselves. And I talked before about proof. Like, is there proof that this matters? Because then that
yeah,
helps other companies, right, to invest there as well. So when I meet young artists, as I met the other day, Angel, who is 24 years old, maybe living in Brooklyn, Black woman, who says to me, "This transformed my life."
yeah,
She's in Horizon Worlds and she is building and she's selling her art to people all over the world who she would never have met if this opportunity didn't exist to be present with others in this way, where she talks about the way that being present this way has helped her socially to get over some of her anxiety, that it helps her then in the real world, she feels more comfortable. Like all of these are proof points
yeah.
that one can share early on so that people can see the benefit of it. And then other companies will know that it's an advantage to build with diversity and equity in mind from the beginning.
Amazing. Now we both share, Maxine, the fact that we're both Caribbean. Myself being Jamaican and Grenadian. I know you were born and grew up in Trinidad, and we always have a lot of young people tuning in. And I wonder, what would be some of the choices that you'd make, knowing what you'd know now, coming out of uni, we've got a lot of folks who are graduates here, 2021, really thinking about where should they go, how can they have impact on the world. What are some of the things that you kind of think about, you wish you knew, or kind of certain paths you'd taken?
It's interesting. I would say I wish I knew how important technology was and how many opportunities there were there. I didn't know that at the time. And I say to you, I wish I had known because, look, statistically, you look at it like this is where there are jobs, right?
Yeah,
This is an industry that is thriving, an industry that is looking for skills that are not as readily available as many others. So, I meet young people who are like, yeah, I'm studying X. And like X is a thing which I'm like, how are you going to get a job with X? Now, I
yeah,
sound like my mother, who, by the way, always said to me, I went to, great universities and then I would choose to study Caribbean studies, which is what I did in my first degree. And she kept saying, what are you going to do with that? Now, so on the one hand, I say to you, I wish I knew how important technology was and
yeah,
how valuable it would be in having a satisfying, interesting, and quite frankly, like a career that pays really well,
yeah,
right? Learn to code. There aren't enough people in the world who know how to code, and people are always looking for people who can code. So, like on the one hand, I would say that. On the other hand, what I would say is that I ended up here and I didn't learn to code and I didn't know
yes,
what I did study Caribbean studies, right? Because what I know as well is that having an open mind and a learning mindset and delivering excellence in whatever you do is going to buy you the freedom and power to choose your next thing. If you excel at whatever you are doing, and hopefully it is because you are learning in it and you see value in it, you are going to get to wherever you hope to be. I never knew there was this world. I mean, when I was growing up, there wasn't even the internet, right?
yeah,
It just didn't exist. So you couldn't plan for it. But what I did is everything I chose to do, I did it because I saw like great learning opportunity there. And then I really committed and did well. And so that then opened another door and another door and another door. And now I find myself an executive in a tech company and I'm not technical. I don't even know how to turn the volume up on my phone, right? Like it's a whole thing. But I bring other skills. And that is the good thing about diversity, is that if you are truly, as Meta is, thankfully, a company that values it, you do have somebody who doesn't understand technology but understands other things really, really well
yeah.
that you need because you're building the cognitive diversity of your whole organization. So you want different parts, right? And so you can still find a place, but only if you have been a learner who has delivered excellence.
Got it. Perfect advice. And I mean, if we flip to, the more professionals in the audience as well, Maxine, they're looking at you again, an executive in a big tech company. What would be your advice to them who's kind of on the role of advancement? How do you be authentic, but also be able to kind of make a very successful path as you've done in the tech industry? Because again, it's not always known, or the tech industry historically hasn't always been known as the most inclusive place, and the place where people who look like us can thrive.
What's interesting is more and more, I don't know that there is one thing. So when I say that, I mean, I'm in the tech industry now, and it is the most inclusive place I've ever worked. And I've worked in a lot of places, I've worked in a lot of countries, I've worked in different industries, right? Because I didn't have that one path, right? I
Yeah,
did all kinds of different things. This is the most inclusive. I have never worked in a company which created a pond for me to swim in. This is a pond I've been looking for my whole life.
yeah,
So there is that. Like, don't assume. Because I've worked in other places, in other industries where people have definitely pushed back against my who I am and not value that. And then I come here and they say, give me more of you.
yeah,
So the first thing is like, don't assume that. Like, you got to find your people.
yeah,
But the important thing is you have to be able to live with yourself. And so it hasn't worked out for me in other places because, I was made to apologize for pushing too hard on diversity, for instance.
Yeah.
Whereas here, what I hear is do more. Can we do more? Right?
You're not doing enough. Keep
I
doing it.
anticipated that. When I came in, I thought, okay, maybe I'll stay 2 years,
Yeah.
learn some stuff, and then move on. And it's been 9 years, and I can't imagine working anywhere else. So for even the seasoned executives, I will say, like, you got to live with yourself, and you've got to find the right place that works for you. So, if you've brought what you have, because at the end of the day, you are valuable. You are the asset because you are bringing something different. And so what you have to find is a place that wants to leverage difference, that wants those assets. And sometimes, if you're like round in a square hole, like it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
But you've been learning. So all of that learning you bring to you as you try to find a place where you really can be valued as an asset.
Amazing advice. Maxine, thank you so much for being part of Black Tech Fest and Black History Month here in the UK. As always, it's always a pleasure. And thank you so much.
Great to see you all and enjoy all of the programming.
Thank you.
Deliveroo presents The Order. You've now crossed over into the pizza zone, a window of pizzery anticipation. Your mind has melted into mozzarella. Pizza, 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 pizza. Go on, do a little pizza dance. Dance round and round like a pizza. Oh, that was quick. Nice jacket. Oh, bingo. Deliveroo. Food, we get it.